Hey babes, my name's Hannah.
And my name's Chasity.
Welcome back to Bookish Babes. Today we are taking something that we saw on TikTok and making it into a YouTube video because we are not original and we don't come up with our own ideas. But this one is true. This one's called the Positive Book Talk tag, and I'm not even gonna try to say his TikTok handle. We're just gonna type it down below. The guy who originally made this, but we just thought it was a really good idea, and they're all books that we love. So that's like the whole premise behind the TikTok.
Positive book talk.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure we've talked about all of these on the channel before, but just in case, here we are in one space talking about a bunch of books we like.
Yeah, but we specifically wanted to talk about books that we haven't talked about multiple times.
Okay. So, first question is, or first template. One of my favorite books by one of my favorite authors. I put down A Love Letter to Whiskey. I have talked about Candy Steiner a lot on the channel. I think that she's really great and very, very, very underrated. She does, I want to say she independently publishes her books. They're all on Kindle Unlimited, and A Love Letter to Whiskey is my favorite by her. Highly recommend. I recommended it to you till I was like blue in the face and you read it and you liked it.
I did. I did like that one a lot. It's really, really good.
I really like Candy Steiner. I've read most, if not all, of her books at this point. And I really like her. So that's why I put her down.
I put one of my old favorites, still one of my favorites, Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. This book really, really got me into reading vampires and reading paranormal fantasy. And when people would ask me what my favorite book was, even though it's so difficult to pick one, this would be one of the ones that I would always say. And it's one that I will never stop talking about. And so I felt like this was one that I definitely would put down as one of my favorites by one of my favorite authors, because Anne Rice is definitely one of my favorite authors. And it's, again, not A Court of Thorns and Roses.
Yes. Second template, a book I love with a cover I love even more. So I know that there's a couple ways you can go with this template. I think it was meant to talk about like really beautiful covers. Not that this cover isn't beautiful, but I put the cover to I Can Be a Better You by Taryn Fisher, which used to be called Bad Mommy. The reason I love this cover so much is because when you first look at it, you're like, is that a fig? Why is there a fig on there? But it correlates so well with what's going on in the book. And it's literally, when I read this, it was like the first thing that I thought of. Because it's the only book that I feel like, I don't know, I just think it's funny.
No, I get it.
I just think it's funny because
It's
like
so
you
good.
look at it and you're like, why is there a fucking fig on there? And then you read it. So that's why I put that down.
It works so well with the entire story.
Yeah, that's just it. Yeah. So many books have like these beautiful, intricate covers that I couldn't pick one of those. So I just picked this one because I like how it is symbolic in like the most simple way. So that's why I picked it. But I like your answer too.
I went with the really pretty. Yeah. Heartbones by Colleen Hoover. Which we're like not gonna, which we said we weren't gonna pick all of these authors that we've talked about, but
I have a couple on here too.
yeah, I mean, Heartbones.
It's a beautiful cover.
It's so beautiful.
It's a great book.
And I had a really hard time picking just one cover. Like,
that's why I went a different direction. Because I couldn't. There's so many books with these beautiful covers.
And I could just pick a book that with a beautiful cover, but it was a book that you love with a cover you love even more. So I felt like I really had to pick a book that I really loved with a cover that I really loved. So
yeah,
Heartbones was just, I really loved the story too. So
it was a great story.
Yeah.
Number 3, a book I really enjoy that is outside of my preferred genre. I know I've talked about this book at least once on here. It's The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey. It's one of the only sci-fis that I've ever read before, and it's a zombie book, and I don't typically go for those either, but it's one of my favorite books I've ever read. When did I talk about this? Was it in a wrap-up? I think it was in a wrap-up that I really went into depth about it. Highly recommend. Loved it. But like I said, I don't read a lot of sci-fi. Maybe I should because I liked it so much.
That's so funny. Yeah. Because mine's a sci-fi.
Yeah, we just don't typically go for sci-fi.
Mine was The Echo Wife by Sarah Gailey, and I really, really loved it. And I actually went the next day or the day after, I went and bought her other sci-fi, Magic for Liars. I haven't read it yet, but I really, really enjoyed The Echo Wife, and I recommended it to you and to Jess, and neither one of you have read it yet, and you need to read it. The Echo Wife. I really, really loved it.
I'm writing it.
It's really, really good.
The fourth one is a book I haven't read yet, but I know I'll love. I put From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout, I think that's how you say it. I know I'm the only person who like hasn't read this besides you at this point, but typically people who like fantasy romance have picked this up, and so I just assume that I'll like it. I'm excited to get to it. I just feel like I am in that place where I don't think I can give this book a fair shot right now.
I agree.
Because I'm just going to compare it to ACOTAR. I don't think that's fair. Because people keep saying, like, if you liked ACOTAR, read this book. And I'm like, stop doing that to me, because I'm not going to feel the same way about it.
I need a break from fantasy right now. I'm doing a palette cleanse.
You're reading a lot of thrillers lately.
I'm reading a lot of thrillers, a lot of more realistic fiction, just
getting warmer out, which is going to make me really want to read, like, rom-coms.
Yeah, I need just a little palette cleanse before I go back in, because literally everything I'm going to compare it to Crescent City right now.
Okay.
And nothing is going to amount up to Crescent City right now. So that's just where I'm at. It's neat, right?
Yeah.
I chose The Red Garden by Alice Hoffman. I love Alice Hoffman's work, and I really, really think that I'm going to enjoy this one from her, because I have loved every single thing that I've ever read by her.
So no reason why you wouldn't love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have it. It's sitting on my nightstand, and it's one that I'm going to get to pretty soon here.
The fifth one is a book I think is criminally underrated. I put, once again, I've talked about this book before, but I don't think it's talked about enough. It's Swear on This Life by Renee Carlino. I don't think she is talked about enough in general. I have read most of her books, and I've loved all of the books that I've read by her. I don't see her talked about enough. Now with Book Talk, there's Before We Were Strangers, I think I saw talked about on there.
Yes, but still, Swear on This Life needs to be.
It's one of the most incredible books I've ever read. Like all of the books on this, like I highly, highly recommend, but that one I wish more people knew about.
I agree.
It's so good.
I agree. I had trouble picking. For this one, I actually had 3 answers, but I've settled.
I just feel like so many books are underrated.
I do, but I've settled. My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. I think it's totally underrated, and I just think it's such an important read, such a fantastic debut, and the writing is just captivating, gripping, raw, emotional, and just absolutely something that needs to be read by everybody at least once in their life. Such an important book of our generation.
We both kind of picked more like, both the books we mentioned are kind of difficult to read in some spots, but important. I agree.
Yeah, absolutely has to be done.
Yeah. Number 6, a book I got because of the cover, and it's now a favorite. I picked a book that I just read last month. It's called Every Heart a Doorway. And the reason I wanted to mention this is because it's another book, it's another type of book that I wouldn't typically gravitate towards, but it's got like this really beautiful cover. It's like a doorway that opens to like this little whimsical looking forest, and that's why I initially grabbed it, because I was like, oh, fun. And then I ended up really loving it. It's more of a novella. It's really short, but it's so not what you would expect out of it, and you end up really connecting and rooting for all the characters as they're going through their individual journeys. And bonus, it has a great cover. So.
Yeah, that one is really cute.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you definitely piqued my interest when you were talking about it.
It's really, really good.
I chose My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing. The cover?
She's holding a knife.
Yeah, she's just holding a butcher knife.
Yeah, casual.
Like, say what? And it's got some pretty colors. It's like white and green with a little bit of red. And so originally I was like, of course it piqued my interest because like she kind of looks like a suburban housewife. And she's just like pretty much looking at her reflection in this big old knife. And I'm like,
it is intriguing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's find out what that is
And
about.
you're like, all right, fine.
But it still like surprised me. I wasn't expecting what it was actually about.
It's not about her using a butcher knife? No.
No.
All right, next one, a book that exceeded all my expectations. This is where I kind of missed the memo that we weren't supposed to talk about books that we've been... I don't think we talked about... Did we do a book babble on this?
No, we did not.
Okay.
No, I think that fits.
Darling Rose Gold by Stephanie Roble. We both loved this one. When I picked it up, I was like, oh, a Gypsy Rose-esque story. And that book was so messed up. And it was such a roller coaster to be in two different people's point of views who have very different recollections of how something went down. And they're both very unreliable narrators, and I just loved every second of it. I seriously think I read it in like less than 48 hours once I actually got into it.
Yeah.
It was so good.
Yeah, you read that one really fast.
Really quick. Because it's like one of those you kind of want to know.
You have to know what's going on with that one.
But like also, spoiler alert, you never actually know because they're both very unreliable, but it's the best way possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're both crazy.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. Kind of along the similar lines, I went with Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough. The thing about this one is it caught me really off guard. I was really annoyed with this book, almost ready to DNF it, because I thought I had it completely figured out, and I was like, are you kidding me? What the hell is happening? Seriously? Like, this is where we're going? And then it just turned it all upside down on me, and I was like, excuse me?
You're like, oh, wait a second.
Wait! Hold the phone? Wow. Just wow. Definitely exceeded my expectations.
I have not read it, but I do really want to. Next one, my favorite book of 2022 so far. We did do a book babble on this one. But that's okay, I'm gonna mention it again. It's Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. Here's why it's my favorite so far, is because I feel like it's not necessarily one that I would consider my favorite. I have my favorite by her for my own reasons, but it's one of those that I feel like deserves the hype of It Ends With Us. Because it's kind of got those vibes to me. You know what I mean? Where it's not,
Yeah,
I think a lot of people group her in with romance, and this does have a romantic aspect to it, but it is more character driven.
I agree.
And it's got a really important story that I think a lot of people need to hear. And it's one of those where it tests your judgment, and I just think it's a really important book. And I every time she publishes a book, I'm like, there's no way that I could like every single one of her books, and yet every single time
makes you question humanity,
and it makes you question your own judgment,
your own judgment, and like whether or not there's actually any black or white.
No,
like
and
there's always gray area in like being good and bad.
And that's why I think it reminds me so much of It Ends With Us, because there's no bad guy in It Ends With Us. There are people who do bad things, but it's how I feel about Reminders of Him too. You know, there's bad situations, and you can see where everybody is. You can see where everybody is coming from. That's the thing. You can't.
I felt like that with Regretting You too.
Yeah. That's it. She does that very well.
She does.
But yeah, that was my favorite of the year so far.
So
I haven't read that one. Otherwise, it would probably be on my list.
My favorite of the year so far is An Honest Lie by Taryn Fisher. Now, I'm not actually counting Crescent City because, again, we've talked about these, but also I can't really talk about it. So I'm going with Honest. I still think I'm going to say An Honest Lie just because, like, it's really hard for me to say, like, that the second of that series is my favorite because I don't know yet. You know, the series isn't done. Right. It's hard for me to say, but I think I'm gonna go with An Honest Lie by Taryn Fisher.
That's fair.
I
started it.
I'm telling you, I don't.
She always like hits for me.
I really think this is really up there in all her books for me.
Really?
I really think it's up there.
Do you like it better than The Wives?
Yes, I do.
Wow.
Okay. I like it more than The Wives. It definitely, it scored higher for me than The Wives or The Wrong Family.
So I didn't like The Wrong Family as much as I liked The Wives, and so I'm worried that I wouldn't like this much as The Wives.
It is up.
I didn't dislike The Wrong Family. I liked it.
Let's just say it's up there with Meryl and Mudvayne for me.
Oh wow.
I really, really loved it.
Mm-hmm. I'm a whore for atheists who kneel and pray, but as far as her thriller
I need to
goes,
reread that one.
You do.
Because I loved it, but I don't think I loved it as much as I should have. I think I was in a really bad place.
Probably. You need to read about Yara right now.
Probably.
Yeah.
I probably do.
You do. I'm telling you, you do. I made the executive decision.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need to read about Yara right now.
Very last one of my all-time favorites that I will never stop recommending. She's probably sick of hearing me talk about this. Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren.
I am not sick of hearing you talk about that because I definitely recommend it all the time.
It's so good. And here's why I feel like I need to keep talking about it. It's because I don't think it's their most popular.
It's not. And I don't understand how.
But it's another one of those where if you really just want to read Christina Lauren, you just want like a fun like rom-com, this isn't the book. Because this is painful to read in a lot of parts, but it is the best story. So, and I think it's easy to read. You know what I mean? It goes back, it's dual point of view, it goes back in time, but it's one of those that's really easy to follow. And it just is like, I just love the whole story so much.
But I think that's why it's also high up there for me to recommend, because I prefer a story that's painful to read.
I do. I want to feel something. Like, I don't like the fun little rom-coms. I just don't.
Sometimes I get in the mood for a fun little rom-com, but not often. I want to think about things. I want to feel something. I want to have it out and like have something to really think about after and have to process.
This is another one kind of like Colleen, where it's like people made bad decisions, but there's no bad person in this book.
Yeah, I need to question it.
And I just had so much fun reading it, and I recommend it to people all the time. I read it, loved it, recommended it to her. She read it, loved it.
I love having a book that leaves me reeling with questions and a bunch of feelings, and like I love that.
And I love the title. I love the title so much after reading it, because the title makes sense after you read it.
I recommend it all the time.
I love it so much. And I've read a lot of Christina Lauren books. I haven't read all of theirs, but I have read a lot of them, and this is still like
your favorite
at the very, very, very top for me. Yeah.
One of my favorites that I will continuously recommend: Pieces of Her by Karen Slaughter.
Yeah.
Holy shit, guys! Just, whew! What a trip. What a trip. All of the pieces
of her
in this puzzle of her, just, I can't even, oh my God. And the way the story is told and the way that these events unfold, I can't even. I loved the writing, the way the story was told, the way these characters were presented, and the way that we learn how these events happen to her.
I love that when you like learn as a reader along with the narrator, or like,
yes, because it's like we're told from her daughter's point of view, and then it goes back in time and we see these little bits and pieces of like flashbacks from like her younger years, and it's so impactful. And I watched the show after I read the book, and the show, they did a pretty good job with the show. It's not as impactful because we see a lot more from the mom in today's. So that was a little disappointing, and I feel like
I see what you mean. That I had to like kind of change it to like match up with like a show format. But
yeah, they did, and some of the most impactful scenes back then were kind of shortened, and they weren't as impactful.
Okay.
They kind of left, I felt like if you hadn't read the book, you would have kind of been wondering like, oh, that's kind of the reason.
Okay,
for
that
all
makes sense. Yeah.
So, I was a little, but I mean, they did pretty good with it. So, I'm hoping that, you know, it seems like from all the people coming in to look for it, a lot of people were drawn in by the show. So.
Yeah, that makes sense.
but anybody
that's always what happens when a show comes out.
Yeah, anybody that's come in, I'm like, listen, you have to read this book. Yeah. If you watch the show, you have to read the book. You're missing so much. So yeah, it's really, really good. Mm-hmm. I want to read so many more of her books now.
Mary Slaughter is really, a lot of people really like her.
I'm kind of just addicted now.
Mm-hmm. She's got good stuff. Mm-hmm.
All right, that's what we have for you today. Comment down below and let us know what you think. Click that like button and subscribe. And tap that notification bell so you know when we post next.